Hello, welcome. Today is Monday, September 16th in the year 2024. This is episode 227. Welcome.
Wow, not bad, not bad. Round of applause for Ray. Round of applause. Is that your first intro on the MSI show?
It's the first time I've ever talked to people, just in general.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Wow.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Great work.
That's good. That's good. Well, I guess we can go around the horn here. Edward will be joining us shortly. Apparently, he caught something over in Denmark that he brought with him, and so we'll actually get to see what that is on the show tonight. But we'll wait. We won't talk about it until he gets here.
What's a virus that Edward would manifest?
What would be the virus that Edward would manifest?
Yeah. Need a name, like.
I'm just not quick enough today, I tell you.
I know, I can't think of one either. I thought there'd be a good one.
Well, I had this weekend where it was kind of a busy weekend, and normally I have to have a few hours to myself on the weekends just to kind of decompress before the work week starts, and I didn't have that this weekend. So I am moving really slow today. My brain is just, I don't know what's going on. So.
Why didn't you have your time to decompress, Rod?
Family stuff. They just, they're so demanding. Oh my goodness. You just, They just want me to do everything. No, I'm just kidding.
People who love and depend on you. I can understand.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't love and depend on me except on the weekends. The week is fine, but I have to prepare for the week. But anyway, I have no quick answer for you, Brody. It's something I think we'll have to think about.
Definitely.
Some kind of flu name. I've always considered, though, have you ever thought about what they name these conditions? And if they weren't named what they are, the names actually could be kind of interesting for people's names. Some of them could be pretty. Right?
Like so rubella?
What is it?
Rubella?
Rubella? That'd be a pretty girl's name, don't you think?
It's so sweet. Yeah.
Syphilis? Something like
that.
No,
I don't know. No. It's just amazing. But we're normalized. This is public health, very important, so no shame, no judgment. This is just entertainment purposes.
Well, absolutely. We're not trying to change. I can just see in 2025 will be the year of everybody naming their child syphilis.
Oh my God, Rod.
Okay.
That was our backup name actually for our daughter.
Was it?
Yeah. We were almost there.
Just inanimate objects like truck and car. I think those would be kind of cool.
Definitely, Rod.
There was a TV show, Longmire, on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen that, but there was an individual in there named Branch. And I thought, oh my goodness. His name was Branch.
My name has actual punctuation in it, like my government name. So yes, it does. Yes, it does. It has a hyphen. So
between the A's or
between the no. So my government name is Ray Mary. Okay, and there's a hyphen there, and that's my legal name. So nobody try to socially engineer me. Well, yeah. So I can never join in on like the look at everybody whose name isn't John. It's I love a good interesting name. I love a good story behind it. I got vetoed. I tried to name my child my name, and then my co-parent was like, "No, you may not, because your name is spelled wrong. Because I have 2 A's in Ray." So and now I'm a single woman. So here we go. That's how that transitioned.
Right and wrong are subjective. Your name is just great, Ray. Just great.
Thank you so much, Brody. Well, yeah, we're talking to a Brody. I mean, come on. I have punctuation in my name. You're Brody. Rod wants to name everybody syphilis, and here we are.
That's just one of them. I think would work, right? So that's not all of them. I have a long
Rod.
list.
Other than names, what have you been up to?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Other than a really busy weekend, what did I do last week? I always work on things that I'm not sure I can actually talk about publicly for until somebody else talks about them or announces them. But
yeah,
I will be able to. I should mention this. One of the things that we've worked really hard to accomplish in the last little bit was to get an actual co-pilot for security MVP award, and that is a possibility at this point. So, got a few co-pilot for security MVPs and some more nominated most recently. So that little group will be growing here shortly. So that's kind of cool.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's it.
And we'll use the heck out of them at Ignite this year.
Nice. As you should. Take advantage. They're MVPs. You gotta. It's like,
Give
hey,
them
you're the
the
MVP now.
opportunity.
What do you do?
Give them all the opportunity they deserve for being such good Microsoft patrons.
Lovely. Just lovely. What about you, Ray? What's new with you?
Oh my goodness. A lot of schoolwork, a lot of recovering from, I was on primary parent duty for 2 weeks straight, and then I handed off to my co-parent. I'm just getting my intellectual capabilities back. There was a lot of, so I watched a lot of Trolls with my daughter. So Branch is a character name. So, there is that. But it's been a whirlwind. I'm excited to be back at work, even though I was plugged in, but now I get to be like really hyper focused. So big fan of that. And we'll see more to come. I was up doing some OSINT exercises, certificates for sites for school. So, I'm living the dream. No complaints here.
Excellent. That's fun. This weekend for me, my brother-in-law got married. So congratulations to him and his wife. We were at that wedding. And so that was an eventful wedding with weather and all kinds of shenanigans. So that was good times. But now we're back. I also had a rough Saturday because of that, but it's Monday now, so we're all good. But now we're back. So at work, I'm working with customers on identifying what Azure platforms that they're currently employing within their secure data environment, and how the Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark can help guide them towards an appropriate level of configuration, right, versus their interpreted level of configuration. So we're working platform by platform, item by item, to make sure that we build some standards for them and that they have a good base of understanding moving forward to deploy things in a proper way, in a recommended way. I'm not going to say best practices, because best for one is not best for all, but we'll say recommended practices. So that's one engagement. And then my other customer, right now, we're currently spinning up, I guess I'm doing threat modeling for another customer, just kicking off some applications, some really interesting applications for threat modeling. And then on my third customer, also kicking off, we're starting off with some Azure landing zone design discussions and architecture decisions. And then we're going to move more into identity architecture. They have a hybrid on-prem cloud model, like most organizations, with all kinds of shenanigans and requirements, because they have a lot going on. So plenty of work coming up here, trying to keep busy. And yeah, that's my life. And I got new golf clubs today. I
wondered about your little sub name there. New golf clubs. I figured there had to be something about that.
Yes, this is a prior agreement with my wife because we had a baby, right? So golf clubs are not a priority when you have a baby. So we had to wait. Until bonus season. And so now, if you buy this year's golf clubs in the fall, you get them at less money because they're on sale. So actually, it's a great time to buy golf clubs, right? So we're all worked out really well.
Pretty well for you.
Yeah. So in a couple of months, I'll just be using them inside for the majority of the winter, but back at it in the spring.
Using them inside your home, like out of like what?
No, there's nowhere to build a. Well, I could could convert the garage to a simulator, but that's not going to be approved by my chief financial officer.
You have to have a second baby. You have to have a second baby for that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, see, I'm going to guide my current child and maybe future child to be golfers, and then there'll be an understanding of investment required to build a simulator, and then I'll be able to do that. Maybe we'll see, but probably not. There's not a lot of places in the house I can swing a golf club without hitting something. So mostly at simulators I will pay to go to, Ray. Unfortunately, not cool yet.
Okay, so not like a race room that you're building.
I wish one day, Ray. One day that will happen. That day is not.
You have to build over top of that garden probably to accomplish that.
The garden. I like just neglected the garden hard this year. Whatever came up, and then we had like water restrictions in my city because of some water main break. So there was like a whole bunch of water problems, and so I'm like, let's see how long I can go without fertilizing or watering the garden. And it's actually kind of surprising
You know what you should do,
little
and
you
I
need to
would
actually
I
water
would
plants.
absolutely
It's a good
approve
experiment.
this if you videotaped it, is do a
Yes.
Carl Spackler with your new clubs on your garden.
What's a Carl Spackler?
You ever watch what's the golfing movie?
Caddyshack?
Caddyshack. Bill Murray goes out and just starts hitting the flowers.
Oh, yes.
It's a lot of rage. I feel like golfing, it's just, for me, that's like what I connect it with, but I don't know.
Oh no,
I'll use pruning shears. I don't want to wreck anything, but thank you, Rod. I'll keep it under advisement if I have a bad day.
If you do it though, I definitely want to know that it happens. So.
Well, I'll record it if it happens. I promise.
Speaking of sub names, mine's Halloweeny. I don't know if anybody knows that, and there's a reason for that. Ray, I'm going to ask you here in a second to talk about something. Are you ready? All right. We have wonderful shows every single week, right? 5:00 p.m. every Monday, 5:00 Eastern time. But we're having 2 shows the last week of October.
Double whammy.
So one on Wednesday, that's our Halloween special. Ray, would you like to tell us a little bit about this? Because I think it's pretty cool.
Very, very excited about it. We have hunters from the Defender Experts team who will join us and share a little bit from their perspective, some of the more gnarly, scary, frightening threats they've been seeing in the wild, and provide a little bit of guidance as to what folks can do to mitigate the risk of such baddies wreaking havoc in their own environment. So very, very stoked about it. We have a double feature, 1 week. So it's nice to be able to bring folks I work closely with day in and day out, just to get to chat with the world and get to share a little bit about what they love to do. So thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and very excited for it.
Can't wait. That's going to be a good one.
All right. I'm back. I don't know what happened. We had a Wi-Fi issue here, but I'm sorry. I didn't know if you
out, or was it?
No, it was me. It wasn't you. I heard everything.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that I had frozen, but I'm back now. So anyway,
you're good, Rod.
Hey,
I was fixated on big pumpkins. I'm sorry. I think Andy was sharing with us that Costco is cool for Halloween. Massive spiders.
Yeah.
Big pumpkins too. Yeah. We're missing our calling. Instead of cyber, we should focus on, I would be all into it, though we should have another spinoff, just like Halloween decor. That's just like my everyday. Big fan.
Just have a spinoff show on Halloween decor. I love that.
24/7. Do I not have enough skulls to actually have like the street cred for this? I'm just saying.
It sounds like you're leading this new initiative, right?
I didn't know.
I will sign up.
Yeah.
All right. We do have a guest, by the way.
We have a guest. Yes,
we do. Just in case anyone second guessed what we do here, other than just talk Halloween. Sorry. But we do have a guest, and a super important guest. And Ray, this is someone that you had invited, and I've known this individual for a while as well, and they're super awesome, and I'm glad they're here. So let's go ahead and introduce our guest on the screen. Ray, would you like to welcome our guest and introduce them?
The incomparable Nishan DeSilva, who leads and has led many of the most innovative security solutions for Microsoft, taking the time out to join the show. It is a very big deal. So thank you, Nishan, for joining us. And if you could share with us a little bit from your own words, who you are and what you do, and then we can do a little bit of a deep dive and pick your brain.
Sure. Thanks, Ray, and thanks, crew. Really excited to be here. So I've been at Microsoft for about 15 years, and I lead a team of custom engineering PMs across the world, working on a bunch of products. Like Ray mentioned today, my portfolio goes from Copilot for security to Purview, and a couple of new incubations that we're already working on. So I'm super excited to be here. And I'm sure Ray has some interesting questions for me, and happy to jump in, and others jump in. And what you'll know about me is I'm going to try my best to answer it directly and honestly, and because, try to be not in the spin zone.
Not in the spin zone. I love it already. That's good. That is a quotable. All right.
You got first question. I got one. If you don't got one, I got one.
Brody, please go ahead. I'd like to be generous that way.
Okay, I just want to jump right into the cool thing that I saw announced recently, and that is integration with Purview and Copilot for Security. I work on the Purview platform a whole bunch. Love it. It's great. Nobody else on this show likes it generally. They all make fun of me. That's fine. It pays the bills. That's fine. All you Purview people out there, we know you're awesome. So, Nishan, why is Copilot for Security a perfect marriage with Purview? And what are your thoughts on the evolution of data security and data protection when it comes to operations in the corporate environment?
Wow, there's so many pieces of that, but I will try, Brody, to kind of break it down, right? So first of all, I think I'll start with Purview because most of you know about what's been going on with Copilot for Security. Purview is one of the fastest growing product suites inside the security division. And for one reason, and this is where the surprise came for us when generative AI came, all these customers ran and started buying M365 Copilot. And they're like, wait a minute, I need to make sure I understand, have visibility into who's using the AI. Are we protecting IP in the organization? Are we oversharing? Can I have a portal that I can see what's happening? Can I put DLP policies on the AI? Can I put MIP or Microsoft Information Protection label? So all of a sudden, that really picked up speed as this new generative AI revolution started. At the same time, we've started working on when I started working on Copilot for Security now about 18 months ago. It was really, we started down the path of, hey, let's go automate and simplify and make things good for that SOC environment. How can we get a SOC analyst to be more efficient? And then as we started looking at a new scenario started popping up saying, wait, how come the SOC did not look at this DLP alert?
Right.
And wait a minute, there was another low fidelity alert that was, this person may have been copying information from their laptop onto a USB. So there's an insider risk alert going. So like, whoa. So this is where we started seeing inside an organization, these products had to get connected. And then we needed to bubble up that scenario. So that's where we saw what was happening on the Purview momentum picking up. And then with the SOC, they realized that where penetration happens is through data. No matter how much the defense we put around, and some of the leaders are talking about, but ultimately the nation state attacker or the hacker is interested in data. So protecting the data was the most important. So that's where you'll see, and I can't believe that you went straight to my punchline, that I don't know what I'm going to talk for the rest of the show, because it is where you will see a lot of investments from Microsoft on how does data and co-pilots and all come together. So, and you mentioned, when you were talking about some of the areas, around Azure, what you're doing around the frameworks. And if you have some time, I'll talk a little bit. We made some announcements. It may have got buried in the news cycle at Build. So there's some interesting things that, go take a look at it again. But there is some very interesting things in Purview that we're also going to do on not beyond M365.
Thank you so much. What a great answer. And I do want to hear more about that. I lose track of all the announcements sometimes. There's just so many announcements that come out.
Yeah, that's true.
Wonderful.
Well, Nishan, it is no coincidence that you have been integral and been a leader on all of the most sensitive security projects coming out of Microsoft, especially as of late. You were critical to the incubation of Defender Experts, the first-party managed security service, Copilot for Security, the game changer for the face of security, just to here on out in the future. We have Purview for AI. What is your secret? How did you manage to become like the dude? This is serious, right? Like, how have you been able to nurture all of these incredibly revolutionary solutions and services for like on a global scale?
One, I have a great boss who believes in me, and then and I think that's really important when and why my boss believes in me is I think I am authentic, and I'm credible, right? So those are two of the things I always, because I'm the person who will go up and say, no, this is not going to work. I'm not interested in getting the kudos and others. It's like being credible and being authentic are two things that I try to strive. But the more important characteristic, and Ray, you worked with me before. Uh, I start the conversation about whether it's an issue, whether it's a product, whether it's an incubation. Your mindset has to be living in the gray. If you go with a black and white view, you're going to get stuck really fast. So you have to approach a problem with the gray, that knowing that you're not going to know everything, knowing that when you walk in, the assumptions you made may change in a millisecond, in a couple of days, or a couple of months. So those are just a few things that I look at. When there are some problems that they've been really tough. But some of these things, usually when I'm brought into this is, can you bring us the customer voice? Some PMs and engineers don't want to hear the customer voice because it's going to sting. But I think it's about how you message it, how you get the right data, and then how do you make sure you capture the patterns and theme, and then be able to make a case. So those are some of the things that I look at, and what I have. Well, I'm very lucky that I have had all these opportunities, but it really comes down to kind of like how I kind of approach a problem.
And the fact that you mentioned the team behind you, right? And I know that your particular style is servant leadership, but what's your model or framework for identifying the talent that's going to help drive success in a way that's going to show up authentically and represent the customer voice in a meaningful way?
I'll start with you. You always argue with me. Argue with me. Yeah. You will always argue with me and say, why? That is what I look for. That is nodding. Right? That is what I look for. I look for people who I can surround myself who are not going to agree with me. That's the most important thing, is to then have talent who are willing to say, you know what, I may not know everything. I think just having folks who are, let me be clear, most of the people you want to have live in the gray, but as the project picks up speed, like where we are with Defender for Experts now it's in a very structured state. That means when you're in GA and now you have to run it, that's where there's another team who will do a really good job. But when you do that incubation, you need a team that will challenge, and it's like just like a startup, right? You want to be able to have, and I'll tell you this, we use this word, it's a cliche called growth mindset. But I will tell you I'll call it my own little masala to growth mindset. My way of thinking about growth mindset, it's really with growth mindset with kindness or empathy.
Yeah.
Because when you want to land something really tough, but if you can land it in such a way that you did not make that other person feel that they did not bring the right information to you. It's about, and make it about the project or the product or the issue versus going on a character assassination, right? So that's where look at people who have growth mindset with empathy.
That's great. All right, great guest.
I know. I'm just so thankful, grateful that Nishan made the time, because you genuinely are the go-to person to make stuff happen and to bring out the magic of Microsoft, right? So the fact that you're saying that you lead with authenticity and empathy, I can attest to it. As Edward was nodding very emphatically, I can be a little bit of a rabble rouser. I'm a little bit rowdy. I'm a little bit mouthy. But to your credit, right, Nishan, you don't personalize anything. You're like, here is this issue that we're tackling. Here is our North Star, our future vision. How are we going to get from here to there? Yep. All ideas are welcome. Yep. And you really recruit folks who are excited to problem solve and attack the problem.
You got it.
That's the reality. And that's why things have been very successful with your leadership.
And Ray, I was not shaking my head because you are a rabble rouser or a mountain. I like the challenge, and I can tell that I do, because you were asking me something about Cali, and where you were watching me or not, I went down there and got into it and say, hey, don't just say go do this or do that. Make sure that you can back up asking someone to go do something that you were capable of, and you made me think, right? So I love the challenge things to think. Sean, let me ask you a quick question. I like the way you approach. Let me ask it this way: having that outstanding, and I think you said leader. I don't know if you said manager, you said boss, and they're distinctly different. Do you find yourself being able to emulate the way that you are empowered by your manager or boss so that you can lead in that manner? Because I see that sometimes if you have someone who's not empowering you to be able to do it to the force to you, it seems a little bit constrained. Do you take that and try to emulate what is coming down and pushing it down, and then you're making your individual reports leaders also, so they feel the ability to, anybody could lead the meeting is what I'm looking at.
This is where Ray did not realize when you invite me, I'm going to give the good, bad, and the ugly, right? So I'll give you the good first, right? I think it's a really good question because I'm very lucky. I have been lucky to have a fantastic manager, but also leader. So I work with about 5 to 6 corporate vice presidents. So kind of have about 6 bosses, right? And I work through all of these folks and navigate. Each one's personality is different. But I think because of who I am to try to each one, right? I don't have a template to say how I'm going to work with this leader. It's the same as the other. So each one, again, going back to that, me being authentic, I have to adapt very quickly to how each leader sets the expectations. Where things get off the rails is you start working with an insecure leader.
Yes.
That just kind of like, because you're trying to, you move the focus in trying to build that person's security versus what you're trying to do to that customer or to that partner or what the outcome you're driving. So that's the dynamic that I think we have grown as a leadership team and across Charlie Bill's organization, where we're really putting leaders who, there are some leaders who are really good at running businesses. Some are really good at incubating. So I think where in my past life, before my time at Microsoft, I've had leaders where I'm like, I'm not going to be successful here because this leader is either threatened by the project, by the team, or by me, right? And that can lead to catastrophe. So that's kind of like how I think about different leaders that I work with. But in this kind of situation where I'm in right now, I feel very good about, I can be blunt, I can be direct, and I can actually, the culture here is speak up, right? And that's the same culture I try to do with my team. And that's where I think a person like Ray can be like, yeah, I feel psychologically safe to do that. But it's not everywhere, right? I'll be lying to you if I told you it's available everywhere. But that's where, that is something, as to listening to your leader, your listenership, it's important for you to do that. Just like we go to the doctor and do the health check, that's a leadership check you need to do. Is my leader there for me? Does my leader have my back? And is my authentic self actually accepted?
Yeah, because a good leader doesn't see everything as questioning their authority and challenging them. They should look at it as this person trusts me enough to voice what is actually on their mind.
That's right.
Because you don't want someone to believe they can't come to you, and now you have an unknown dissident within your ranks.
That's right.
And that person can be a sub leader that people on your team look up to, and they see that person's not happy. Right. Speculation is yours, right? So I love leaders that would say, yeah, challenge me, but and don't use the cliches. Don't come with, instead of coming with problems, bring solutions. Well, I'm coming with a problem because I can't viably find a solution. Help me find a solution, right? So that's good. That's great.
And I'll add one more thing to it. Every single day there is a project or one of my team members are failing. I embrace failure. I actually say, this is fantastic. We went there, it didn't work out. Hey, we tried this with this skill in Copilot and it went down the wrong path. And now the SUs are sucking, and there's stuff going on here. So how do we learn from this? So very quickly, failing fast. What I look for is people who are like vulnerable to say, you know what, I think that was a bad decision that I made or we made. And how do we now learn from it and move forward? And I'm one of those leaders who never say, hey, remember this, Ray? 8 months ago, you told me this. And now you hit reset and you move forward, right? So I think that's one thing that we, at least in my team, I try to make sure that not only me, because the other key thing is I haven't had perfect direct reports in my career throughout the years, but I really try to get direct reports who kind of aligned to, they don't need to be me, they have to be opposite me, but they need to understand that culture that I'm trying to drive.
Yeah.
Imperfect direct reports like Ray, right?
Yes.
No, that is actually genuinely, I think, accurate to a certain extent, because I came from another company that had a very different culture, and there was some hesitation from other folks that I would interact with, and Nishan would step in and say, hey, like, she's one of us. It's okay that she can be a little bit bold, and that's what we want. And so you, like, Nishan walks the walk and talks the talk, and people take for granted, oh, Copilot for security, it's changed the world and will continue to do so. It had everything put together, but not necessarily day one. And it was your team, I think, that was instrumental in making sure that it was as successful, right, Nishan's? Because there are lots of folks who could have been like, oh, AI, okay. But you hand-selected. No, Nishan, he picked folks that would represent the customer voice, who are leaders with such incredible empathy. And I can speak to it because I know these human beings, and they worked on other incubations, and he knew that they could put together like on a continuum, right? Like they had the experience and they could build on it. And so I've seen Nishan's leadership firsthand. So I do my best to talk the talk and walk the walk myself. And so, I think it's important for the world to get to hear a little bit of the wisdom I've been very privileged to experience in my time. So thank you.
Look, I have a lot to learn. Look, I just feel like every day I'm learning, right? So that's why all of us together here, right? We all learn every day. So no, like I said, for me, just coming and spending time with you guys, this is exciting. So, and I'm sure you have some tough questions for me. I know you guys are nicely kind of setting the stage, so I'm ready. And if I don't know the answer, I'll come back to you. Like I'll have to come back and do a follow-up. So.
Well, and I appreciate that, just the discussion so far. So just to extrapolate a couple things that I thought were important to highlight. Maybe we can discuss this a little bit further. I think this is super important. And what you have done with this discussion so far is you have merged personality and our software development process in one little silo in that. And I love that gray mindset that you utilize, right? So you almost have to approach things, expect to be wrong or appreciate to be wrong almost. Because I think a lot of times, both professionally, personally, and also as part of software development, we sometimes take this ownership of what that thing is, that project or whatever it is. We take it personally, but we kind of have to expect failure, right? We have to expect it, because if we expect it, we know how to kind of pivot and adjust ourselves professionally or personally, or even that project. Because I think from a software development perspective, there's going to be failure at every milestone, and you have to understand that you don't take ownership of the failure, you take ownership of the pivot or the adjustment, right? So you build something better.
Hi, Brody.
Oh, you saw that, Nishan. Nishan sees the private chat. All right, you want hard questions, Nishan? All right.
Go for it.
How about the Secure Future Initiative, Midnight Blizzard? Talk about failures. What does Microsoft need to do, in your opinion, to meet the objectives of these security issues moving forward, with your unique perspective in the engineering org?
Yeah, I mean, I think Midnight Blizzard really was a humbling experience for us. And I think there is when Satya talks about there are like 35,000 security engineers working on this, and I have in my team. I am also accountable for a couple of things, and I have two dedicated people in my team that are focused on the Secure Future initiative. I think there's a lot of work we are doing across the organization. There are multiple waves going on right now of making sure that we remediate, but we're not stopping there because I think we want to be transparent about all these learnings through our CISO's organization, Igor Szynski and Ann Johnson. We'll start talking a lot about these out with probably I can try to see if I can get her to come and be on your show. Like, I mean, she's just phenomenal. We'll talk about what we are doing internally, externally, and also we want to make sure I just came back from UK. I met with some of our top banking customers. Then I had a conversation around this. So it's one of those things where we believe, and I think this is the key thing, right? We believe where if we can all work together across all partners and look at, we keep talking about who is our true competitor, or who our biggest threat. Is it a competitive threat? It's really more about the nation state hackers and all these organizations. That's kind of where we all need to work together. So you'll see us collaborating with multiple organizations and kind of creating this concept called collective defense. So you'll hear a lot of us talk about collective defense, which is really about it's not Microsoft alone. We are going to try to fight the threat actors. We're going to work together. So you'll see a lot of that kind of outcome. So again, going back to that humbling learning, how do we have this experience and then reflect on it, but just say, okay, we're going to just quickly put chewing gum and duct tape and we're done. But now learning from that, figuring out there's a lot of work that will, over the next couple of years, we'll talk. So it's not like a small project called SFI that we do today. It's an ongoing project. There's a lot of seriousness. So even in my own team, we have scorecards. There are weekly updates that go up to Satya level that talks about all the activities that are going on. So it's a serious initiative, and there is a lot of work that's going across the organization with multiple work streams. And I think you'll start hearing us talk about some of these. Definitely, there are some conversations we will have under NDA with our customers, but there are some things that are best practices that we will share across the planet.
I love to hear that. I love to hear it's not just lip service. It's not just a marketing name we're putting on a thing to get the press out of our hair. It's actually you're seeing tangible results internally.
That's right.
And you said something that resonated with me. Microsoft, not the empire, but more Microsoft, the hegemony, where we're looking to partners and a global kind of consensus and a shared, vision for all working together towards this common adversary. Right. I just think that's a great mindset change.
Yep. You'll hear more and more about the concept of collective defense, and like Ann Johnson has been talking about that in her podcast and etc. There's a great podcast if ever you want to go look at with two of my leaders, and Ann, it's one of my favorite ones, which Ann interviews Rohan Kumar and Sean Bice. And it's just a fantastic. There's a lot of pieces of information in there. So go listen to that. And then, Brody, you come back and say, hey, I know what Nishan was talking about. So please do listen to that. That I think she just one of her last podcasts before she changed her role to go work for Ego in CISO's office.
Well, I think that the SFI is real at Microsoft. I'm one of those persons that like to go back and look at history and see if it repeated itself. And in a manner, this is. Because this is one of maybe second or third major initiative that Microsoft had to look at itself and then decide to do better, right? And the whole Windows security thing with the OS was a big thing back in the day. And now you're starting to see this. But my question is, when you say partnership, you really have to be definitive in that. We throw the word partnership out, like we throw so many other words out, and then we leave the interpretation. But when you say partnership, it has to be a very diverse partnership. The customers have to feel as though you're partnering with them. As Microsoft goes, a lot of the customers go, right? The business has to feel as though you're partnering with them. Because in the end, the business runs the business, right? We know that security is important for the business to be viable and not to depreciate how well it's doing, but the business runs the business. And I like to see how long this thing lasts, where we go through and we do the things that we are outlining, and we haven't tested it yet, at least not open, where so security takes precedent over profit. That's the biggest thing you've seen out there. We're going to talk very, very openly. People that are bashing Microsoft are saying profit took precedence and priority over security. Now we're saying that's no longer the case. The third partnership is external to, we have all these consortiums, but it's still competition. How far will the partnership go with other people who are vying for security dominance in a space that Microsoft is leading in a lot of the categories? Because partnership can't be acquisition. Partnership has to be truly working with a competitor for the good of the customer. You know, Rod and I can relate to this. We're both distance runners. The distance and the time will show. Proof is in the pudding, right? And we'll see what happens. Because if you take this too long and someone in the business looks back and goes, the competition is catching up. Something has to give here. It's a slow draw. So I love what you said. Right now, it's all good because we're seeing it, but it has to be more than that. The external customers, which is one of the partners, has to see a visual representation that this is getting better for them. And I know mandatory MFA and the tenants and doing these things and that they're going to want to have to see it. So I am still watching, and a lot of people are watching to see how it is. Right, the partnership is probably the most important facet of that. Partnering internally, partner with your Microsoft partner ecosystem, and you've got to partner with your customers. And that's trust. That's just
well, and I think one of the things, and I'm going to form this in a question. Let's just relate to our listeners, to our audience, right? Nishan, do you have any examples or any recommendations for our customers on what they can do? Because I know talking with customers and speaking in front of customers during this AI tour, a lot of software developers, they really don't care about security. How do you get people engaged and interested enough to know that security is everybody's job? How did we do it internally, and how can we teach customers? What's the recommendation there?
Yeah, I first of all, Edward, awesome, well said. Just want to say that's beautifully said. And then, Rod, to your question, I think I'm going to go back to what Brody said earlier and how I started this conversation. Right, if you start going to the business. If you go and start talking about, hey, I need you to do zero trust. I need you to make sure that you're not getting phished. All of these are words that are just like, what do you mean? I'm trying to run my business here. But if you start the conversation with, hey, how important is your data for you? How important is if they steal that data? How important is it if someone overshares that data? How important is it if you lose that data? All of a sudden, the conversation becomes more relevant to that customer, partner, or even that business unit. I think that's where kind of like, I just love this. CISO gave me this. I was just doing a pitch on Purview, and this CISO goes, Nishan, data wants to be free. And we just have to we're trying to catch it and protecting and do all these things, right? So I think that's how you really start having that conversation. Take a data-centric view and bring that, Rod. That's how I would, because I think if we go techno speak or cybersecurity speak, it's going to get lost very fast, very fast.
Speaking to the business, that's perfect. I love that. You got to align it to some sort of level of money, effectively, capital, success, shareholder value, people's jobs.
Yeah. So, Nishan, you came on and you were super hyped about Purview and Copilot for security. So one of the things we're looking for is, those very reproducible, high impact use cases. Have you seen one, so far that you could talk about?
Sure. if I were to take a step back and reflect, right? So always one thing that we do is we look at and Ray knows this with any of the products. We always look at what were the delighters that the customers have been giving us, and what are some areas that they want us to improve upon, right? So that really helps us kind of prioritize the features, etc. And I think one reflection that we realized very quickly with Copilot for Security, that's why Purview came into play, is that we went ahead. And if you have seen this slide about Microsoft Security Suite of Microsoft Defender, Sentinel, Purview, Priva, Intune, Entra, that's kind of our chakra, right? And you take that and you're like, well, we went directly into the SOC. And then customers say, hey, where's the value? And we have been focused a lot on bringing cross-collab scenarios and not only focusing on the SOC analyst. We want the compliance analyst in there. We want the insider risk analyst in there. We need the IT administrator in there. We need the identity administrator. So we're trying to make sure that this is not just people writing it off saying, oh, Copilot for Security just for the SOC. So that's first. Second, oh my goodness, the amount of feedback I keep giving our team, and really important that because every time I walk into a customer, first thing they say, Microsoft, I don't only have your solution. I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it goes on. That's my digital estate. So we got to very quickly make Copilot for Security really thrive in that ecosystem and bring all these connectors in and make sure that there is a monetization strategy around it. There's a way of adoption around it. Okay, so those are things that we really have heard from our customers what we need to work on. Prompt notebooks is just very focused on the SOC. How do you bring multiple prompt notebooks and how they start connecting? So that's kind of another area that we'll be spending some time on. So those are the big ones that we believe, because ultimately we have to show value. Because if you look at the hype around AI, and we are like, let's get realistic about some core scenarios where this is applicable for multiple personas, making sure that we thrive with the partner ecosystem and create a monetization strategy around it. Number three, make those prompt notebooks very much more beyond SOC to make sure that it can integrate and connect to other products in your environment, because many people use various other technologies for their workflows in the SOC, their workflows in Purview. So those are some of the big areas that we'll continue to invest in.
Just from an outsider, I'm not the Purview expert, Brody is, but and now I'm having to cover Copilot for Security as a workload. I heard what you heard. I heard that it seemed like it was two different products. It seemed like Copilot for Security with Purview was so far ahead. Like they took off and nobody else heard about it, really. And I saw that and I'm like, that makes sense, because if you're using Copilot for Security away from Purview, a lot of it's abstract, that you are looking for something that may or may not have happened, hence false positives. But when you're using it with Purview, it is the present, because you're looking at a data that exists and what has happened to that data, what is position and disposition of it. So I find that it's very much less hypothetical. Your data is leaking out of SharePoint. This person is copying stuff here. They're doing this. Yes, your CASB did not catch this, and now this information or this thing the metadata got untagged. So when I saw Purview, I asked myself, why is it so far ahead of the other use cases? But it's because you don't have to think in abstract. I don't have to go prove that something happened or not happened. I'm telling you that your file server or your SharePoint Online is doing these things, and somebody's logging in with a Gmail account, accessing sensitive data. Yeah.
That's bold foot, man. I never thought about it like that. You're right. It's kind of like, hey, it's happened. It's not like, maybe there's some traversal. Maybe somebody did this. Yeah, it's like, it's legit.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Well said. And we been lighting up with a couple of customers the AI Hub, and the first reaction is, wait a minute, are you kidding me? If my sales team is going to this third-party LLM, why are they even there? right? And then go, of course, the next feature they want us to build is block it, quickly block it, right? It's like block the heck out of all these sites. But just giving awareness, I think that's where, you'll hear a lot because Purview Suite is also pretty big, right? If you have the data security workloads, you have the data governance workloads, and you have the compliance, right? But data security workload is the one, especially those MIP labels, insider risk, and DLP are the ones who are really coming to the forefront with AI. And I think that's where you'll start seeing more and more Copilot for security Purview piece kind of really picking up speed. And that's where we are seeing all of a sudden the SOC world, in fact, including Ray's world, really thinking about this from a data perspective. And yeah, thank you, Copilot for security. And then there's a whole piece around P for AI and MDA. There's a lot of work that we are doing around that area, bringing cloud apps. So yeah, you'll start seeing. I know we've always said this for the last 20 years about cross collab scenarios are important. Cross collab scenarios. I mean, AI is actually forcing us to do that because the AI can also help us kind of bring two skill sets, right? Because look what the UI can do in Copilot. You just have to build the skills. MDA builds a skill, Purview builds a skill, and then depending on the scenario, the skills will be called to solve the problem.
Yep, absolutely.
Follow up if you don't mind. Oh, sorry, Edward. Do you have another one?
No, go ahead. I lost that train of thought. Let's stay.
Okay, I'm sorry if I interrupted you, buddy. Okay, so on that note, Nishan, when I talk with large organizations about managing data security, data governance, risk, it's always a tough sell to say, oh, just incorporate this into your SOC, because your SOC analysts are being trained in a completely different discipline of investigation. Do you, in your opinion, would you recommend there needs to be a separation between like a data SOC and everything else SOC, or some sort of merger? Like what's your take on that? We've seen a lot of different scenarios out in the wild.
It's so funny, Ray. Fatima, who's on my team, built this white paper about all the different personas, and just about 2 years ago. And I had said, Fatima, just last week, can you bring that document back? Because I mean, that's a fantastic question, because I think this is where I don't know if there is one size fits all answer, because each organization culture and structure is so different. But what I can tell you is that I think there needs to be someone, whether they sit in the compliance office, mostly I truly believe they need to be part of the CISO's organization. Let me start without getting down to SOC. In the CISO's organization, there needs to be people who understand insider risk, who understands data security with DLP, and obviously understand all the defender pieces, right? So I think that's where I believe this person needs to sit. But definitely there's an opportunity, from learning from prompt engineering in the Copilot world. But I think data security, a skill, and I know I just met someone recently on my trip to UK. There was a college student who joined a partner organization, and this person kept on going to me, this young out of college student. Oh my God, I love Purview. I'm like, wow, okay, first of all, that is so cool to get that college. He's excited about Purview.
Right?
And she goes, I just love the fact you have this thing called communication compliance that connects into insider risk, and then we have this MIP label. I was like, wow. So I think there's an opportunity here, and I think there's good. I know that in the leadership, we are thinking about how do we upskill people to understand data. I think there's an opportunity for us to do that. But I think you're on to something, because I'm seeing that, and probably we'll pick that up as a skill very quickly in the next couple of months.
It's amazing. It's amazing how data has become the excitement since AI was presented, right? Everybody's like, oh, we need to do something with this data.
Agreed. Well, but also, if I follow up with a spooky, tough question. Sorry, Edward. One more, man. Sorry. Okay. On the communication compliance front, now we've got the ability to put in keywords or phrases that we're going to track people on. Now we have the ability through Teams to get reports on how active our employees are throughout the day, maybe using a mouse mover or whatever to try to augment that at home. And now we've got an AI-powered solution which can leverage all of this data to give managers and leaders more data on our own personnel and our own environment more than ever. It's kind of spooky, right? I get recommended all kinds of videos on YouTube, like what Microsoft, what your boss knows you're doing when you're not there using Microsoft tools. Like, at what point is there really just no semblance of privacy anymore within the workplace for real with these tools? Like where's that line get drawn?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So we have an entire reasoning engine that runs through all the AI we built, right? So that means everything we go through our privacy filters, even product development goes through privacy filters. So anything that we build, that there is the whole AI for good strategy that we have. So all these pieces, our legal review, etc. So and then we build the product, and some of these pieces we have built around comms compliance. Just want to let you know, we were late to the game. There are many other partners who have been doing this, especially in the regulatory environment. That's where we started. Having said that, that's where, while the capabilities there, how you implement it for an organization which are highly regulated, let's say in a pharmaceutical environment, financial, they have to go through their privacy approvals, etc., how they get implemented, right? But as we're building the skills, it was really more about meeting some of those obligations that were coming as part of businesses that wanted to do. So we're not going beyond that, but definitely there's a lot of pieces, Brody, that one piece was around how we build AI and how we need to make sure that the AI is a good AI that we build. We go through the click stops. More importantly, I think we have been building a lot of watch the watcher capability. So let's say that Ray is the administrator and she's like, I'm going to spy on Nishan. I want to make sure Edward, right, has full access to what, even though Edward knows that Ray is the global administrator, we can have an audit trail and not that she can't go, erase her track. So that is fundamentally how we're building purview components to make sure that watch the watcher piece is definitely in everything that we do.
We had something in the military for the job that I did. It was called two-person concept. It's exactly what you said. You have to have two people with equal experience and our skill set to watch each other to make sure someone can do something here. But let me go back and be a cynic a little bit about that. You're saying you have someone to watch the watcher, and AI is watching AI, and all these things. One thing I found about corporate America, that they start emulating things external to them that bring them benefit. And one of the things you're starting to see is that huge corporations are starting to emulate this phrase within governments. It's a matter of national security. You're starting to see these companies saying this is a matter of corporate security that justifies their actions to be able to go do these things. And then you'll find AI being the scapegoat where we didn't tell it to gather that information. It just happened to do that because the model wants to please. And so I'm a little bit wary of, self-policing. There needs to be an AI use audit that goes beyond just a document. Someone needs to come in and be able to do it, but then the companies will shield it because they can say that this information is beyond your purview, no pun intended, to be able to see. So you're going to fall a lot upon two things: self-policing and ethics, business ethics, right? And you're going to find whistleblowers. You're going to find that as AI becomes more prevalent, whistleblowers, which are organic, is going to go, they are recording this and all of these things across all organizations. The more data you capture, especially when you justify it by using, we're just trying to ensure the minimum amount of insight of risk. And then that's synonymous with the means justify the ends, when the ends justify the means. Are you worried about that at all? Because you're seeing these lawyers for these corporate companies not only come in to make sure that you are using it responsibly, but I can also think they're saying, "You sure we can do this? There's no regulation. We're gonna not be in trouble. Well, let's capture that information too." Do you have any concerns about that as an industry? Not here, not in Microsoft. I mean, just as an industry of doing.
Great question. I have a couple of points to make on that one. So first of all, I think what we are seeing as an industry, I think there's a lot of AI regulations that are popping up all over the planet, right? And I think we are going to be very much, like Brad Smith talks about, we want to drive that with other partners, other countries. So I think we're embracing the regulation. So that's number one. Number two is I think knowledge is power. Having someone like me coming and talking in a forum like this, Edward, and the more we can educate the consumer and the enterprise customer and the leaders about what AI can do, only the good, bad, and the evil, right? So all the pieces and what are the things that we as a company have done to make sure that we are safeguarding your data. And those pieces, I think we have an opportunity here to educate the masses. Number two. Number three, I feel like we've gone back to the days, if you recall, when we were going from on-prem to the cloud. Oh my God, we have to go to the cloud. Data is going to be A, B, C, and all the concerns. So I think we are going through that same motions here. While I get involved, my team, most of the time, the customers have purchased AI and they have started with 5 licenses and they're like, oh, this is good. Then they expand it to about 100 licenses. The anxiety starts creeping. And that's when they're like, oh, I need something that can protect my AI, right? So I think you can see not only what we are doing as Microsoft, even other partners, really thinking about AI and taking a security and a data mindset. I think so. You'll see those pieces because we know that customers and partners and consumers are getting concerned about this, right? I mean, I was just talking this morning to my wife, and she goes, "I got this email. Boy, this phishing email is way more sophisticated than what I used to get 6 months ago." I said, "Yeah." I just don't click on it anyway, right? I said and I think this is where I think we have an opportunity to one, educate folks. Now the regulations are going to be really important. That will help, and then also the key thing is to put the right controls in place. That's why very quickly we as Microsoft, there's a lot of investment going on. First, let us do data protection on our own first-party application. That's why, Brody, I was talking about. Go take a look at the build announcement on the Purview SDK. It's the beginning of something big that's going to come where we can start protecting, LLMs and AI applications, Copilot Studio, etc. Right? That's how we're thinking about it.
Very cool. I'll look at it myself. Brody's not the only one who loves compliance. I like compliance.
Awesome.
I like being compliant.
It's so good. You go back like 2 years, and I was starting on the show, and these guys are like, "Oh, it's the compliance guy, Brody." And now we're one big happy compliance family, Edward. I love it. We're gonna
all it took was a co-pilot. How about that?
Yeah.
Brody, they call compliance people the one man no, not the one man show. Brody would come in, no, we're not doing it, no. And so but you're seeing it now once again because data security and compliance is not abstract the way threat detection and hunting is, right? You have data that's real, and you have risk and compliance, which is real, and you can correlate that to say, why does Edward have access to that? That in itself could constitute a breach, right? No need to know, role creep, and access augment, right? And so might not have been deliberate, but that's not a problem. Threat hunting, what are you hunting for? We're hunting for bad activity. Okay, anything we consider bad activity, which is why I think that you're seeing compliance because you can see return on investment on that if you know where to look more readily than looking at traditional ways. And Brody was right on this. You're starting to see that you got to separate these operation centers into maybe SOC threat and SOC risk.
That's right. That's right. That's spot beautifully said because just last week, working for a big organization, one of the people's jobs was, hey, my business teams wants to start piloting and testing things and building LLMs on Azure OpenAI. I need to start approving them. So I'm manually going through what is the application? What does it do? Is it storing data? What is it like? All these pieces. And then we were kind of talking about how some of these pieces are going to get automated. It's like, oh my goodness. And then you have an audit trail and then I can have a report. What's going to happen? And say yes and yes. And they're like, oh, this will help us a lot. Because I think that's where, while we are here talking about AI and governing it, every organization that I have been talking to, they've started thinking about how they can improve their businesses. I'm just absolutely surprised when I look at. I've been talking to some very, very let's call it very conservative organization. Took a long time to come to the cloud. Boy, how they're actually looking into AI is mind-boggling. I'm like, wow, I would have thought that they would still just be using on-prem servers and not even think about AI, and that's not the case.
Well, here's the first person in the room that's going to be one of those people that don't agree. I don't think we need to separate. I think we need to create a tool. And I'm thinking, I have one in mind that pulls all that stuff together. One tool you can use that separates those different workloads. Because when you start putting teams in silos, you kind of end teamwork, right, at that point. So,
well, I'm
talking about Copilot for security, by the way.
I don't mean it.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't mean it literally, and I'm going to disagree on that too, because, and it's according to what you mean, merge them or keep them together. There are a lot of aspects about Brody's skill set and what he does day to day. While I speak the Queen's English, I can understand what he's saying. The concept may evade me, right? Yeah. Like, hey, Ed, I'm looking at this, and this is GLB and something like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm looking at it. Well, what are you trying to tell me? The same way I can go do some things on the threat side that Brody would go, I hear what you're saying, Ed, but what does that mean? Give me the context. I don't mean make them totally separate, but Rod, are you talking about the way information, telemetry, alerts, incidents, and data is aggregated, or are you talking about? I'm talking about
normalizing operations in a way that we're talking about copilots here. I'm just being honest.
No,
I'm talking about a copilot. No matter who asks that question, that response is going to be specific to that workload.
Yeah, I agree with that. When the co-pilots, because they can look cross disciplines and cross skills and cross front books to be able to see it. Because I think you're right. The expertise of co-pilot is the person that's entering the prompt. So I sit down at the desk, I come in, and I do this, and then Brody comes sit down at the same desk and ask that co-pilot a different question, but co-pilot can see across both ways.
Yeah.
I was more like, where is the signal coming in to be able to measure the amount of effort into investigation? Because I'm thinking like a threat guy. But yeah, I agree. The co-pilots are probably the linchpin between all of that, right? You being able to do it. But you very rarely see SOC talk about risk. Oh, we had a risk alert. Risk alert was a risk alert. I think I'm trying to articulate that if you try to do that with a biological entity, their skill set would have to be massive. I can see why Copilot can take that massive single person skill set, put it in a single place where anybody can come into that room and talk. I think a Copilot is a translator among all the different skill sets.
It's an empowerment, not a replacement. It takes us back to the original. Oh gosh, AI is good. It's taking our jobs, but it's not. That's not the case, right? Like, help us understand it.
I think Nishan has something to.
Yeah, I'll tell you. No, my statement's going to be very brief. Basically, Edward and Rod, that was one of the most exciting scenarios that you talked about. And unfortunately, I can't respond to it. I'll put a pause on that because I'll come back and respond in a few months. But
I know.
It is an absolute, that is something we are talking, and really we know that we have a huge opportunity in front of us. But you guys just crystallized that problem statement beautifully.
And we create a problem because when you look at marketing getting out there and getting in front of it, why do I have Copilot for security? Perfect. Is the other one going to be Copilot for security Intune? Copilot for security Sentinel? Copilot for security? So why did I have to do Purview? Why is that
October, November? Maybe we can talk about
all of our Ignite announcements, Edward.
Yeah, stop it, Ed. Stop it, Edward.
Will you guys stop? There's no such thing.
Nishan, do you think that there's enough tools right now today to protect organizations from the permissivity? Is that a word? The promiscuous nature of Copilot and Copilot for security across their own organization, checks and balances, right? Preventing it from accessing data it shouldn't, et cetera, people from accessing the data that it can read, et cetera, et cetera.
So short answer is yes. And Rob Lefferts has been talking about this with some of the pieces that we have. And there's a lot of investments we're making to kind of like get a lot of blueprints out there, white papers out there to make sure, because there's a lot that is kind of like a big conversation CISOs are having with us right now. And so we are sharing those. And I think you'll see us more publicly kind of like talk through that, because everyone's like, oh my God, am I kind of going back to that SFI conversation, right? Am I protected? Or do I feel good about how have I set up my Defender suite and my Purview suite right? And then we're like, well, we are a small team. There are thousands and thousands of customers. How do we get this information out very quickly so the field, okay, we can scale through with its fast track, through with the field people, with the partner people. So there's a lot of work that's happening to make sure that we get that information out.
I'm going to ask a question that goes industry type stuff. Just want your opinion, Nishan. As you start seeing monikers being used around titles and duties and responsibilities, there was a time when the CISO role was not a respected role. It very rarely sat in the boardroom. At its most low point, the CISO reported to the CFO, conflict of interest, right? Or empowerment. I'm thinking, and I said this few shows back, a year or so back, that the I in the CISO maybe should be dropped. I think you need a chief security officer. And, it's not just about information anymore, right? You have a chief information officer, and that term to me is sort of dubious, right? When information is just so broad a thing, it is what I have, what I potentially have, or what I know. I should be a chief data officer, but that already exists for compliance. But now I'm seeing the CISO role have a resurgence. And the way I know it's having a resurgence, they're starting to get budget that is independent of the CIO's budget, the CFO budget. They have their budget to be able to do things. Do you think the moniker of Chief Information Security Officer is a little dated and it should just be Chief Security Officer? Or, and I add a 1B to that, I'm starting to see fewer and fewer CTOs. You're not starting to see that role have the thing anymore. I'm looking at a role where that Chief Technology Officer is now becoming that Chief Security Officer. So now you have a CTSO, Chief Technology Security Officer, right?
Yeah, no, it's since you asked a direct question, I'm going to give you a direct answer. You're on to something. Because what we are seeing is you're wanting let's call it the CSO, right? Which really need to be one strategic, can talk to the board, can understand the business, and can understand the implications of security and understanding the data of the business of the company. That's because the previous CISO came from the network administration and IT side of the house. Now we are asking some of the CISOs I've been meeting with these big banks. They've actually, some of them have come from the business side of the house. Mm-hmm. Because you need to be able to protect the business assets and making sure that the business can continue if there is a crisis. That mindset, with that business mindset, technical mindset, risk mindset. So you're onto something here. We are seeing that, including in our own organization. We've seen some transformation happen, right? Obviously, Ego, I worked with him when he was my customer, and the mindset he has as a CISO, very much, while he can be super technical, but absolute business mindset, absolute understanding the ecosystem and building community. And again, I actually, it's funny, one thing that I wanted to learn about, I think I talked to Ray about this when I think she was working with me. I said, I need to learn more about the CISO. And I actually ended up taking a class at Harvard. It's like a 8-week class I took and learning about the fundamentals and how we should think. But then we spend a lot of time taking that business mindset, because that's kind of where how it's evolving. So really good question. And I think, yeah, you're right about it's organically happening, but I see this trend moving even faster, Edward, with AI coming into play.
Yeah, I'm in that probably same Harvard Extension course that you're taking. I've taken 2 of them. So I understand. And so these questions are not just because Ed came up. I'm starting to see these things. I'm like, you're starting to see not necessarily the deprecation of the CTO role, because they are future thinkers. right? And there also could be the chief adoption officers. Like we need to do this that. The CISO did not run out and say we need to use AI. He's like, oh my God, it's something else I got to worry about. People stop doing this, but you start to see it a little bit more that the technology front thinking has to be accounted for. And now you start to see CISOs take over both roles a little bit, right? I said this on the show, and corporations are adopting AI because they have FOMO. They have corporate fear of missing out. I cannot be the company that's not using AI. I have to say I'm using it. Otherwise, people are going to think my competitor is better than me, even though they're not using AI for anything else, right? So that FOMO is driving a lot of adoption, or at least exploration of AI, and it's moving really, really fast. That whole role responsibility thing, and I'm seeing the CIO really go back to what they were really geared to do, right? The line of business is more in line to the information, but neither here nor there. I want to make sure I wasn't the only one sort of seeing this.
I don't know. You're onto something. Absolutely onto something.
So you mentioned something, Nishan. As we're kind of winding down, I guess, for the show, our time together. But you mentioned taking that class, and that's something that our audience always appreciates discussing with our guests. It sounds like you do a heck of a lot, and you have a heck of a lot going on all the time. And Ray she'll be the one to tell us about that. But how do you stay up to date on all this stuff, right? Not just because we've covered a wide range of things today. We've talked about data, we talked about the AI, we talked about cybersecurity, we've talked about this changing of the roles. How do you stay up to date? What kind of recommendations would you give to our audience?
Well, I'll start by saying they need to listen to your podcast. That's number one.
There you go. Thank you so much. Yeah.
What a crowd.
Get out of the way, right?
Thanks.
I think there are 3 ways that I learn. One is, we have this concept here at Microsoft of now, under Charlie's leadership of writing these 6 pages. We write growth documents, we write strategic papers, and just learning about, because that means you have to actually put your thoughts together, and then you look at the market trend, what's going on, how do you build the product. So that really kind of helps me fundamentally create a mental model where I need to go focus on, right? Whereas what are we doing? Just like we had this conversation about what are the trends, what's happening. So kind of like doing like a self-check. What am I working on? Am I doing something exciting, interesting, or what do I need to do? So kind of building a mental model, what I want to. So that's my first thing I do. Second is that now where do I go harvest that knowledge, right? So where I'm a big, that's why I listen to Ann Johnson's podcast. There's just listening to podcasts, and that's kind of like looking at every day in the morning. I start with the financial update, what's going on. I look at what are the tech trends that are going on. So just on a daily check-in, that's my first things I do is 3 things, right? Cybersecurity news, what's going on, what's happening in the markets, and then what's happening kind of like inside the organization. So those are the 3 things. And then podcast is one avenue. Second is around kind of like learning from our leaders, and especially reading these documents, number 2. And 3, Ray knows this, why I go for conferences and meet and networking with people. I have even though I lead a decent sized team, there's a couple of things I learned the best from my partners and my customers. And because they are trying to solve real world problems. So my mantra is, at least I try to go meet with a customer or talk to a customer 2 to 3 times a week. So that's what I do. Now, for your listeners, so that's kind of what I do. But for the listeners, I think I just had my daughter dropped off at college, and she's going to be doing data science. So I'll give you the speech I gave her, and she's not going to my daughter's not going to listen to me because I'm the dad, right? So how do I get this framework into her to say, hey, look, there's a whole trend around AI and data that's coming. So just kind of like when you're looking at classes, have that mindset to looking at how are you thinking about how AI is helping. And both my daughters were heavily involved with whales. So whale research, understanding their DNA. So I'm trying to help them see how does AI help. So anyone who's kind of like listening to your show, where is AI playing in the world that they are interested in? So that's one. Second, I think I truly believe, and this is where I may go super deep, but I really think that people should learn about prompt engineering.
Oh, yeah.
Really think that they should spend time about whether you want to if you know prompt engineering about how to make the killer chicken vindaloo or whatever, right? But if you want to learn about how to make the best lasagna, just prompt engineering, not only for learning how to do your sock job, right? I think that's number two. And number three, I think we've gone away from, and I'm so glad, Edward, you mentioned about Harvard, and there are some formal education and just kind of like even reading the books and what's going on there. I think some of those traditional things we used to do, we still need to do, and that's kind of like taking time and reading, right? I think those are the three things I would say.
Yeah. I very much agree with you on that last statement. I'm finding myself, as I mature in this career, get older in this career, I find myself more geared toward the business, understanding the why or the why nots.
Yeah.
And when I signed up for that course, I wanted to understand the reluctance and sometimes the adoption mindset of leaders from small organizations to super large, right? That's a role. That's just a role is basically you put on a jacket, they put it on your, and there's a big old circle on your back. And it says, not if, when. That's all it is, right? Not if, when. I'd like to share one thing to our listeners. You'll get a kick out of this here. Let me share my screen really quick. And we'll pick this back up on the show. We'll close the show out with this.
Nishan, before you go, you said that you're going to join us again, maybe after Ignite?
Yes, not before Ignite, but after Ignite, I'll be happy to come and say, remember, these are the things that I was, dodging. I'd love to come back after. Happy to do it.
Awesome. I've never seen Brody blush this hard before, by the way. Like he's gotten in so many questions.
So data wants to be free part 2. We'll schedule free.
And I put in there call freedom has a cost. So I signed up for this because I went and I don't think I announced it, but I achieved the Associate CISO certification from EC Council a month ago. So I decided to pursue this further. I did something, I got invited to this thing. I can't figure out why. I'm not an active CISO, but when I saw it, I absolutely said, 2 reasons I want to go. I'm in Atlanta. It's these 2 days. Ray, I know we can talk about this, but check this out to the pod listeners. Who is that?
She was
on the show. And Elizabeth, she's no longer at Microsoft, started her own company, and she's one of the keynote speakers. But you see this, I'm making a point with this, that the industry is starting to recognize expertise is not what you're comfortable in seeing or working with. Check out the speakers. Tell me what you see that jumps out.
This is a trick question.
You're starting to see more people of color, and specifically women, speaking at very high levels now, coming in to make these changes because the perspective needs to be modified. The technique may be relevant, but if you don't have the perspective,
100%.
you're not going to get it. So when I would see that, I actually jumped up a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I'm going downtown for this. Yeah. And that's the thing I'm starting to see a little bit more away from the technical stuff, right? What are the thought leaders? And obviously, sir, you're a thought leader in this. Are you going? Are you one of the keynote speakers there too? We can get you on.
I know that I'm going to be out of the country during that time, but that's a fantastic conference. And I just want to, you made another good point. One of the things that we as colleagues across the industry, I think bringing diversity and inclusion into what we're doing. So for example, Ray knows if she goes and looks at my leadership team, it's extremely diverse because because bringing a diverse team helps you look at problems very, very differently versus being monotonous. So and just trying to make sure that again, going back to listening to everyone, what they say. But I think the industry is changing, Edward, to your point, and having different perspectives, because what our threat actors are also thinking very differently, and we have to adapt very fast. And I just love the fact that some of your questions, but all of you asked some really good thought-provoking questions, because it really helps me even think about, wow, didn't think about it that way. So I really truly enjoyed this conversation, and I'm happy to come back, and like I said, happy to come back and talk more about this. There are some, I mean, every year we have some exciting announcements, but I think with what's going on with AI, what's going on with agents, what's going on with cross collaboration, I think there's some exciting things to talk about.
So we definitely want to come back, and you said something. You said agents. Let's talk about that when we come back, sir.
Edward, I think he's got to go.
Yeah.
He's got to go.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can just build that's for part 2. That's the sequel.
Part 2.
Thank you
All
so
right. Thank
much.
you, everyone, for joining. Nishan, thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Thank you to our audience for listening in. Extra long show today, but some super awesome content. We will talk next week.